This week I have three topics I want to go over. One is more D&D world building for the Aryssan homebrew setting. We're going to talk about the Artificer subclass that I finally have a draft homebrew put up on D&D Beyond. Second, I'll pull out the book that's going to be the next book report that will probably start in about 2 weeks or so that I have time to actually, read and get some notes on it. And third is just a little bit of a discussion on how debates or political discussion happens online, and just a new way I think would help make those discussions more effective and cut through a lot of the stuff that gets in the way of making them useful. We're going to start with talking about our new subclass, and I'm also going to try out this new thing I think I can do. Excellent. Here we have the page in D&D Beyond. We'll make that a little bit bigger. First, we're going to be tackling the Artificer because it's one of the few classes we haven't done yet, and I had a very good idea both thematically and narratively of what we wanted the Artificer subclass to be. As you can see, we call it the Gemshaper. So what is a Gemshaper narratively? That is an artificer who, in the Aryssan world, either officially or unofficially, was studying a phenomenon that we call the gem mind, which is essentially a potentially sentient crystal-like structure growing on the Everbright, which, as part of the D&D fantasy homebrew setting, is a giant spear that the world snake climbs up. And so this crystal grows throughout there, and Gemshapers study it and have undergone some sort of experiment gone wrong, where they have become part of this unknown crystalline substance has become part of their body biologically. One of the famous Gemshapers in our fantasy world here is a villain known as the Cerulean Mystery, who essentially was the first artificer who did this and became some sort of crazy, violent golem. So it's kind of an understood thing that studying this is dangerous, and so artificers who do this, they know that they're sort of playing with fire here. And so that's our narrative explanation of what is a Gemshaper. We can see, the different things, how I normally build things out. You have your description of what it is narratively, what your Gemshaper does, and then your builds. Here we've tried to focus on our combat of the sphere, or combat pillar in the three pillars. I always call them spheres, but I think the book calls them the three pillars of adventure. So we're going to focus primarily on the combat build for this subclass. Our bonus spells, there are not a lot of really cool bonus spells available in what you can actually publish. So here you've got some very basic, not exciting artificer stuff. You can unlock things and lock things. You've got the ability fabricate and secret chest give you some interesting things. Since you're also playing with crystals, we gave color spray and hypnotic pattern. The bonus spells are solid, but they're not all that exciting. The primary thing that sets you apart is your level 3 ability here, which is you essentially, at level 3, you enter into this subclass and you get whatever happened in your backstory that's making you become this Gemshaper finally triggers, and you essentially, one of your arms becomes coated with this crystal, making it this, gem symbiosis is what it's called. It's a placeholder name, but essentially your arm is now a magic crystal arm that gives you some resistances, lets you mask the rest of the magic that you might have on you. Because your arm is magic, you can punch people with it to deal magic damage, which is probably not that useful. But the two biggest things that it gives you is that You can use that arm for both material and somatic components. It lets you basically free up a hand to do something else. And if you're an artificer, you normally get infusions, which let you magically enhance something that isn't already magical. And so in this case, now you can add it to your arm. So if it could normally be something that would go on a shield, armor, or a melee weapon, you can add it to your arm. So it gives you another thing that you can use to make yourself stand out from other artificers by giving yourself kind of this innate power in your arm. The next level that you get anything as an artificer from your subclass is 5. Here, you're again not getting a lot of interesting things that you can do, but you get a lot of power that will probably on further reviews and drafts we're going to have to change, right? Getting your intelligence modifier as an unarmored defense might be too much. Wizards is pretty lenient with handing out high armor classes to people, so it might get to stay, it might not. The other big thing is that you get these gem-shaping dice, which essentially let you get a minor bonus to your attack, your spell attack or damage, or giving you an additional bonus to your saving throws, which combines with Flash of Genius, letting you have a pretty solid saving throw whenever you need it. In addition, you can also use your reaction if Flash of Genius isn't useful to you in that moment to gain resistance to magic damage as a reaction. 2. Here at 9th level, which as you can see, I forgot to write that this is what you get at 9th level. So whenever we do the a proofread and edit of all of the subclasses, we'll fix that. During the day now at 9th level, you can change your infusion on your symbiotic arm midday, which just gives you a little bit of flexibility, which is one of the things artificers tend to excel at, right? They are meant to have, a tool for every occasion. So this is just another nice way to, if at the start of the day you wanted bonus armor and later on in the day you want one of the other many good things you can infuse, you can swap out what you have on your arm. Likewise, because as an artificer you already have a super overloaded reaction slot where you've got a lot of good choices, we'll just give you another one that lets you potentially counter spells that target you. 15th level, this is the end of what you're getting from your subclass as an artificer, besides some of the bonus spells. Actually, let's scroll back up. Yeah, you get your last bonus spells at 17, but at level 15, we're going to give you, again, a lot of these names will just change. You attune to your gem arm to a specific elemental plane, letting you, gives you a layer of defense against the appropriate element, or in Plane of Earth's case, just gives you a giant pile of hit points, and each one gives you a little extra bonus. Plane of Air's damage may need to change just because being able to throw out 66 int mod a day might be too good. It probably is too good since you've also got, three-quarter spell casting on top. So this is on our watch list when it comes to power for the Alchemist. The other ones, not that great. Plane of Earth, being able to not be moved as much and being able to stand up without having to give up a whole lot of your movement are solidly good, but again, this one, well, the hit points are pretty good, but this one's probably the one I'd be looking at to fix more. And Plane of Water, because you're going to be getting essentially slightly modified cunning action, we may just need to change so that you're not stepping on the rogue's toes by taking that. And there we go. There is a quick rundown of the Artificer subclass that we've put together over the last couple of weeks, and that's now ready to go out there. As you can see, there's some formatting fixes we have to do, like adding in the proper level for this, but there you are. We'll have links to all of the other subclasses in the video description, just in case this is something that you're interested in. And now our book for the next book report is one that's been on my shelf for a while. We mentioned before we're going shallow and broad as our reading for the next little bit. So we've talked about philosophy, with existentialism, we've talked about literary theory a little bit. We've also talked about reading and the joy of reading in general. So now we're going to do a little bit of a dive into economics with cooperation and coercion. It's by Anthony Davies and James Harrigan. They're the hosts of Words and Numbers, which I'll probably listen to a little more frequently than I currently do, just as we're going through, to maybe get some more insight into the book. So like we've done before, we'll probably go one section at a time every week or so and try and follow the through argument to better understand what argument they are making. Speaking of arguments, online debates or discussions are not particularly useful. Whenever I watch them, I always walk away feeling like a lot of time was wasted. So why does that happen? Well, let me walk through what I think goes wrong, and then we'll talk about proposed fixes. First, I think most people who join into these discussions, they're there to talk about what they want to talk about and not necessarily the topic or even what the other person or people there are there to talk about. They're going to twist back to whatever it is they want to discuss or posture over, and that means that they're not there. I don't want to say they're not there in good faith. They may not even consciously make those sorts of decisions. It's just, this is the thing they like to talk about, and they're going to try and come back to that. In addition, because these debates are often focused more, we're going to discuss X, and X is a broad topic, no one really knows what it is exactly they're going in to talk about. They've got a very broad range of topics within and subtopics within whatever they're given. So with those things in mind, here's what I think needs to be done. So if you want a debate, as opposed to just one of those freewheeling discussions, which are good, but if you actually want a debate on a topic, you need to have a point of contention, right? Preferably one where the people debating differ on whatever that point of contention is. The best way to do that is to phrase it as a question, right? For example, should we go to McDonald's or Quiznos? That's a point of contention. The terms are clear. And if they're not clear, then the people who are about to get into this debate can go, wait, let's clarify so that we actually have a definition, we know what we're going to discuss, and we know what the sides are. Because if you can't even agree on what the discussion means by saying, should we go to McDonald's or Quiznos, the discussion has a very strong chance of being pointless and not getting anywhere useful. For example, if the one person comes in thinking we're talking about where should we go for breakfast, and another person thinks where are we going for dinner, this isn't a debate that's going to get anywhere or is going to be bogged down during the conversation by something we could have resolved before the conversation, right? If you want a debate, you need to have this structure around it that holds everything in place, right? It's a box. And again, in a discussion, you don't need a box, right? But for a debate, the point is to come to clarify your point and maybe reach a resolution on the point of contention. But the point is that we're working around get this point of contention. The second thing is that after the opening statements, each side's argument and solution should be so clearly laid out that I know where the discussion is going to go, right? These opening statements should be like those 3-5 essays that you learned to write in middle school and high school, right? Say what you're going to say what you said you were going to say, and then tell me what you said. be in, be out, be done. The third thing that we really need to change is there's too often a scrambling for sources mid-discussion. People are sending links back and forth. People tune someone out as they're scanning through their last document that has 10 different studies looking for the one that they can cite. And then the next part of that is that if you're in the middle of a discussion with someone and they stop and like, hey, read this, it's not really that helpful, right? Because you should be able to politely and firmly say that, the time for homework was before this discussion. We're not here to try and in less than a minute scan through this 50-page study to, dismiss it because we found like, oh, the sample size was goofy. Oh, the conclusion isn't as strong as you thought. That's not what we're here for. All of the fighting over sources doesn't help resolve us towards this point of contention, right? Likewise, if you do present me a source that, is new, is different, that I haven't seen, and you can't summarize it or answer basic questions, this is also a way that a lot of these discussions grind to a halt. If someone asks you, what was the methodology of this new thing you linked me to, you should be able to say, oh, it was a study of X amount of people. Oh, it was a survey sent out to Y people across Z populations. You should be able to have that. You should be able to know, like, how big is the sample size? What are the conclusions that were made? Were there any caveats? You need to have those answers, because if you falter at any point, I'm not going to believe you've read this study. I'm going to believe that you pulled a line from somewhere in there and you were just hoping no one checked you on it. And that might not be charitable. You may have actually done your research and it just, that wasn't a question you thought would be asked. But we're in the middle of a discussion and you're springing this out like it's a trap. You need to know it inside and out. But that doesn't matter, right? Because you've sprung this on me and I have a choice, right? I can either just accept this thing you're showing me is valid and good. I can accept your appeal to authority. I can accept that maybe your appeal to authority is even valid, right? There are a lot of authorities that are good that we should trust. But why are we doing this now when we had all the time ahead of time to, determine what is a good source? And so that's why the biggest proposal here is that if you're going to have a debate, the sources that everyone agrees on as these are the facts need to be laid out ahead of time. Because a point of contention that's just a fact isn't a good point of contention. No one wants to argue over how many red Chevrolets are there in the parking lot. That's not a useful discussion to have. What we should have is that everyone who's going to sit down goes through and says, okay, these are good sources, these are bad sources, so that no one's sitting down in the middle and is like raises their hand and says, hey, this line of discussion we've had is great, but your report's from 2010. Is there anything more recent? And then everyone's scrambling on Google to try and find out what, if anything, is more recent. Let's stop doing it that way and instead do the homework ahead of time so that we could skip the back and forth debunking of individual studies or questioning of sample sizes. Agree on what the world is, and then use the point of contention to define what do we do about what the world is, right? This is like I think the phrase I used a few times is it's a debate canon, right? Because if you're going to enter into a debate with someone, you need to be able to agree on, again, this box where the point of contention is at the center of. If we haven't laid out the ground rules for how we're going to resolve the point of contention, then why are we going to have a debate? We're going to waste everyone's time defining, for example, with the point of contention being how many red Chevrolets are there. We're going to argue, like, do we mean all Chevrolets? What shade of red? Those should all be decided beforehand. And then you'll realize, oh, this is a useless conversation to have. We should talk about something more useful. If you can't agree on what is or is not true, you can't get to talking about things that matter, right? Like, it matters how we're going to take the fact that X, Y, and Z is true. So what do we do about X, Y, and Z? So you can disagree on what data to give more or less weight to in a debate, right? Like, okay, yes, we know X is true, but Y is true, and because of this philosophy, this thought, I think we need to give more weight to Y than X. But we're not arguing over which is true, right? And that's where I think discussions should go if you're trying to frame it as getting to a debate, right? The final thing, and this is going to be big because everyone who's debating is there for different reasons, and very few people are there to answer a point of contention, right? But if that's actually your goal, if your goal is to sit down with people who you may not agree with and reach a conclusion as to, this is what I think is best, this is what you think is best, let's see either if we can, one of us is like, oh no, you know what, I'm totally wrong, you're right, or if we can reach a compromise. To do that, any question not about the topic directly related needs to be firmly and politely dismissed, utterly out of hand. For example, let's go back to this McDonald's and Quiznos discussion. Like, where should we go? If someone's like, well, let's talk about the ethical values of veganism. That's an interesting topic. Maybe we can talk about that later, but it's got no bearing on the point of contention. So set it aside. Let's talk about and stay focused on the point of contention. And the key thing is that people are going to try and weasel around this and say like, no, if you follow this line of questioning, you'll see how it's connected. No, don't entertain that. If someone tells you it'll get there, ask them how. Because as you get better at discussions, and this will be true for any writing that you're doing, where you're trying to be persuasive about something, the fewer steps it takes you to get from, here's my idea, to why we should do it, to, hey, so let's go do it, right? The three things, right? Problem, solution, call to action. You want as few steps between those three things as possible. Because if I'm like, here's the problem, 10 steps later, I'm like, by the way, here's what I think we should do. And then, there's a huge tangent. And 7 pages later, I'm like, and so to do that thing I said we should do, let's do this. There's 10 steps along the way, and then 7 pages along the way, where I could lose you at any one of those points. So cut out all of that unnecessary blather and get to the heart of the matter and stick on topic. So there we go. Those 4 points. No one's going to listen to me talk about any of these nerdy topics, right? Like, no one cares too much about my little D&D creations, my next book report, and certainly no one cares about this, how to have more productive discussions, debates, because discussions I think are freewheeling and they can do all of these things because you're generally there. It's a more relaxed setting, but if you really want to do a debate, I think these 4 points are going to help, right? Have an actual point of contention. Do your homework and agree on the world reality and your debate canon before you sit down to have, turn on the cameras and have the debate. And, that limits source stalling as well, but it flows a little better. Plus, and this is huge if you're trying to involve an audience, you can be like, hey guys, we're going to discuss X. All that we're going to focus on are this report, this scientific study, and this 60 minutes expose on it. So all of a sudden, your audience can inform themselves and be on the same page as all of you, and follow along and not have to wait for someone to link them whatever random thing someone grabbed off the shelf without really seeing if it fit, right? Your audience can be on the same page. The person you're discussing or debating with is on the same page. And you've already done a whole lot of bridge building beforehand so that you're going to have a more productive discussion, because all of the posturing and arguing early on is gotten rid of because everyone already agrees. Yes, that report is a report where we agree on the facts. And now that we agree on the facts, here's how we interpret and use those facts. So I think the debate canon is the biggest thing that will help if you actually want to have good, effective debates. And finally, I think something else is just in general, and this is true whenever you're talking with people and even in real life, try to like keep all of your distractions away. Put away your phone, minimize your other windows, just like be polite and focus on the person you're talking with. So there we go. Gemshapers, they're neat. They're online. You'll be able to get the link. We'll be talking about cooperation and coercion as our next book report. And, you know, if you're going to get into a heated political thing with someone, put a structure to it so that A, a structure will make the conversation more polite, and B, more productive. And so, odds are, again, like I said, no one cares about my opinion on any of this, but there we are. Thank you so much.